understand what I went through until I took that time to be still and actually write my experiences and what I was feeling, from those experiences on paper. So, I think, not to say that writing will be a replacement for therapy, but I do think it can be somewhat of a helpful guidance to give you give you some answers to your question that you've been experiencing because, you know, it's either A, you write them down and express your feelings, or you keep it locked in, and that's just going to bubble to the surface and make things worse. So, definitely
Mm, I
moments like
got you on that one, brother. I do, and I think for me, writing and to add to your point, writing became writing became cathartic for me.
hmm
Became like that thing I looked forward to um, every time I got in front of like my laptop or I got in front of or I grabbed my pen and a pad. It became that place where I could write about what I was feeling and and be okay afterwards. You know,
Yes.
if I wrote it down on a piece of paper or I wrote about what I felt, what I what my day how my day was, and then I expressed that emotion, I felt good afterwards. I really did.
absolutely.
And then also, I found another outlet too, besides just the writing. I'm a the I'm admitted I'm a huge gamer. So video games is the other thing for me that is another good outlet for me. Um and as weird as this is gonna sound, and I'm gonna say this because I think I said it before and this was like a couple of years ago. For me, in some instances, the proximity of my emotions is sometimes tied to the game that I play.
hmm
Um, and I've said this to a bunch of people before. I play, I play games for enjoyment, a little bit of a challenge, but but mostly for me just to disconnect for a bit and then come back. You know, I know people think, well, that's an obsession with that you didn't. No, it's a way that there's a way that I can relate and that way that I can release. If you leave me alone, let me be on Call of Duty for like 30 minutes to an hour, I'll be cool.
Right.
Leave,
That's your
let
self
me
care.
let me be on let me be on COD for a minute and then let me come back. But the question that I was asked to me is like they asked me, well, what is the proximity of your emotions when it comes to video games? I said, well, for me, and again, this is gonna sound really, really weird coming from a guy, but I play mostly I play mostly if it's a like a role playing game or something that allows me to choose the type of character that I want. I play mostly female characters. There's a reason behind that. For me, the female characters have a lot more emotional depth. They deliver the lines with a lot more emotional clarity, and it's a lot more relatable to me. Not This is not to say that the male characters aren't capable of doing that, but I relate more to the female characters. If it's a man character and I get to choose whether it's a male or female, I pick the female all the time because there's an emotional connection to to the lines that they're speaking that it holds more emotional depth for me. And I know that that's a weird thing to say, but I tell folks that all the time, and they look at me like, yeah, that is weird. I'm like, it's not weird. It's how I can it's how I connect with my emotions. If someone's feeling like if there's that part of a where there's grief part of a game where there's grief involved and that person delivering those lines and it's hitting home with me, of course I'm going to immediately relate. Or I'm
Right.
going to immediately kind of empathize and recognize with that. I think and this is something that I said before. I think a lot of people, again, I'm not going to say men or women, a lot of people don't realize the proximity of their emotions. Where they could be tied to, where they could be linked to, what they could be where they could come from. It could come from a book, like it could come from you writing a book, something that's cathartic. It could come from playing a game. It could come from exercising. It can come from just sitting down and meditating. No one really knows the proximity of one's emotions until they start exploring their emotions, exploring what makes them tick, what makes them angry, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what makes them anxious. what puts them in protective mode?